Hey everybody, this is the Longhorn Confidential for Tuesday, October 24th. I'm Danny Davis with the Austin American-Statesman. I am joined by Kirk Bowles and Cedric Golden. Thomas Jones has been having some technical difficulties this morning, so hopefully he'll be able to jump on here at some point, so we can all make fun of him for his little microphone incident on LHN yesterday. If you were able to catch Steve Sarkisian's press conference, we had ourselves a statesman blooper, but that's neither here or there. We appreciate you all watching us on YouTube or the Statesman website or listening to us wherever you get your podcasts. But let's talk some football. We were off last week. I missed you guys. Let's get right back to it. Do some Longhorn confidentialing. We're a couple days removed from Texas 31, Houston 24. We were all in the press box down there in Houston. They fed us well. Texas got off to a 21-0 lead. I thought we were going to be riding at halftime and getting on back down the road back to Austin, but did not necessarily happen that way. Houston actually rallied, tied the game twice. In the end, CJ Baxter, 16-yard touchdown run with 5 minutes and some change left, ended up being the difference. Obviously, the big storyline was Quinn Ewers got hurt in the third quarter. We'll talk a little bit more about that later, but kind of just looking at this win. Kirk, we'll start with you. Is a win, or is there something for these Texas fans, Texas players, Texas nation to be a little bit concerned with? Is this a sign of bad things to come?
It is a win, but there's a very large asterisk by it because they didn't play well, and they didn't play well against Oklahoma. They could have won both, could have lost both. So it's just the trend seems not the best for a team that was just cruising, for 5 weeks and just kind of, meeting every challenge. So I don't know. I've got some concern, and the quarterback is one, and obviously the secondary, and then the lack of a pass rush are two others. So I'm not going to say their pass defense is in disarray, but now they're facing starting quarterbacks. Not that run of a backup quarterback like Jason Bean and Evan Savoda, and look at these numbers, guys. Milroe, Dylan Gabriel, Donovan Smith. 918 yards and 6 touchdowns. The other four games against backups, they averaged 181 yards per game passing. So it's clearly made a difference. And I don't know, it just makes me kind of feel like maybe we need to reevaluate this defense to a certain degree.
Said, if you're a Texas fan, are you happy that they just got a win or able to move on, move up a spot in the poll, or are you concerned? Are you starting to freak out a little bit?
Oh
All I
my.
know is one AP voter who will remain nameless moved him down in his poll. I'm not calling out any name.
Oh no, I stayed the same. I left them
Did
at
you?
8.
Did
I,
you?
I left
You
them at
stayed the
8.
same and everybody else moved them a little bit up, right?
So that is true.
That's what happened. So
That's
at this point, Daniel, style points can't matter. Quinn Ewers is over in a sling. He's hurt. And now you just got to win. And you got to hope that your cachet and your blue bloodedness is going to carry favor with the voters in the CFP if you run this Big 12 table and beat the Sooners again. But first things first, you've got to take care of business against BYU and a senior quarterback in Keaton Slovis. And like the Duck said, they're finally facing some real guys now, some guys who have played a lot of football, some Dylan Gabriel types. And that's going to be what determines if they make it or not. They're banged up back there. Ryan Watts is hurt.
Boy, they miss him.
Yeah. Jade Barron thought he was getting a day off. Trust. He
Yeah.
thought he was getting a day off when they were up 21-0. All of a sudden, he's back in there with that toe. So it's a lot. It's a lot right now. I think they're fortunate to be where they are, but they're going to have some problems if Quinn doesn't get back. If Quinn is more of a 4-week thing than a 2-week thing, they could have some problems in the second half of this season.
Thomas, let's test out your audio, see if that's working. Is a win, or is this a sign of concern for Texas fans?
Well, let's see how my technical difficulties are doing.
You
A win
sound
is
great.
okay, thanks. A win is a win, but there's if they're playing like this, as Doug said, they're not going to win the rest of. They're going to have difficulties keeping winning because they're facing some real quarterbacks. They're facing some teams that are getting better, like Kansas State and Iowa State. They have to fix some problems, or these wins that are just wins, they're not going to be wins. Simple as that. And they're not healthy. And the coaches have talked about the depth on this team. It's not that deep yet. You know, this isn't Alabama circa 2015. They still need depth, especially at secondary, especially at the pass rush. And without those, they're going to have some issues. I do think they'll win this weekend, but they're going to have issues.
I'm kind of the belief that a win's a win. If you keep winning, everything's going to turn out for themselves. I mean, I'm sure as Kurt could tell you, since he fills out a ballot every week, that top 10 was a kind of a mess this past week. UNC lost. Washington has the Heisman front runner by far, and they scored 15 points. USC, which isn't a top 10 anymore, but they have the reigning Heisman Trophy winner, and they're pretty much done for the season. I mean, there were some interesting scores and some teams that were Oklahoma. You know, we were watching that in the press box, and they got by UCF at the very end, and UCF is not a great team. So I kind of think if you're a Texas fan, you're happy with the win. Obviously, there's things you need to be concerned about with this team, but I don't think beggars can be choosers. And you just kind of take those wins and you just keep it moving, and it's a lot better than the alternative of reacting to a loss. So kind of going off that game, we mentioned some names. You know, we expect the usual suspects to step up in these games, but this 7-point win over Houston had some unsung heroes. You know, the Savion Reds, maybe even a Jade Barron, Keelan Robinson. So who's kind of your unsung hero of the game? Who's the MVP that's not your Jonathan Brooks, not your Xavier Worthy? It's kind of the underrated star. Seth, we'll start with you.
Michael Taft, former walk-on, Westlake. Could have gone somewhere and played, but wanted to come to Texas and has shown himself worthy of playing time. He goes up and he makes the biggest defensive play of the year, reminiscent of Snacks Colburn causing that fumble against K-State. It was huge. It saved him. I mean, it actually, and I don't know if anyone on this call really believes they're going to make the CFP now that Quinn's hurt. I'm very skeptical of that. But I will say that interception kept that dream alive, because if they lose that game, we're not talking about CFP anymore. I mean, we're maybe mentioning the dreaded A word, and I'm not going to say it to Daniel. I'm not going to say it to Daniel. I don't want to ruin Daniel's day.
What do you call him?
He knows what I'm talking about. Huh?
What are you calling him? Starts with an A?
I'm not calling him that. I'm just
okay.
the game that he doesn't want to cover ever again. It could be in the mix if they lose that one. So
the A word is less offensive to me, to be quite honest.
It's the city, which is worse because I love that city. But I believe he saved not only their CFP hopes, but still kept them firmly entrenched as a favorite to make it to the Big 12 title game. So Michael Taft is my guy.
PJ, who's your unsung hero of the Houston game?
Well, first of all, if we're talking about certain bowl games, there was a representative of the Pop-Tarts Bowl in Houston Saturday. For what that's worth, I don't think Texas will be playing in the Pop-Tarts Bowl.
That's the thing. The Pop-Tarts Bowl is a thing.
Yeah, we may all be going there, so be careful what you talk about. Now,
you might be going. I'm not.
Look, Jalen Ford is not. Jalen Ford is never to be confused with an under-the-radar, underappreciated player, but he's been a little quiet this year. Let's be honest. He leads the league in tackles, but he hasn't made a lot of impact plays until Saturday when they needed him. He had a big sack, and he had a big strip sack, forced a fumble against Houston in the second half, and that was just one of the bigger plays of the season. And Jalen really needed that for his All-American reputation, you know. I think that was just a really big play by a player who was due for a big play, because he hasn't had that many of them this year.
I don't know if we're going to allow Jalen Ford to be our unsung hero. Kind of like me saying, I think the unsung hero this NBA season that's about to tip off is some guy named LeBron James. I don't know if y'all have heard of him.
You
But
compare Jalen Ford to LeBron James? Hoo-wee. But
we-
first
we-
of all,
The defense
I agree
is
with Michael
LeBron
Taft.
James.
I agree with Michael Taft, but said took Taft from me, so I improvised.
You could have just agree with what Uncle said. It's all good.
No,
Kirk,
I agree
uh,
with you.
Kirk, who do you want to pick? Xavier Worthy, Jatavian Sanders, some of these under the radar offensive guys. Who are you going to go with?
No, I'm going to play your game honestly and ethically. And yes, Michael Taft, 8 tackles. He was very, very good. I'm going with the obvious elephant in the room, Ryan Sanborn, the punter. Had only 3 punts, 52 yards a game. He had a
Awesome.
59-yarder. And get this, guys, he's averaging over 47 yards a punt, but he's only punted 17 times. He doesn't even qualify for the national rankings because he's
I don't like that. I don't like when they say that.
I know he's not punting enough.
Because if he's the starting punter, that should be enough. Because just because his team is that good,
I know
shouldn't disqualify him. So
Agree.
a crappier team's punter will qualify, but no, he should qualify.
He's 8th in the nation if you just look at the yardage, and he's had 7 50-yard plus punts. He hadn't had a punt block, so he's 8 punts short of qualifying. So he's going to have to pick it up. But I'm going to go.
If he ends up qualifying, we're going to end up in a bad bowl game. That's what you're saying.
Michael Dixon was MVP, remember, at the old Pop-Tart Bowl. What was
Is the
it?
Texas Bowl? Is the Pop-Tart Bowl the old Texas Bowl? Am I missing something?
Is that the one in Texas, in Houston?
I think it's the one in Orlando.
Orlando. Okay, I'm not a big Pop-Tart guy. I'll go to the Tostitos Bowl.
I could get next to some Pop-Tarts to go see the mouse.
You're not eating Pop-Tarts. Where's the Chick-fil-A
I want to
bowl?
go see the mouse.
Oh, you don't. Grow up. Where's the Chick-fil-A bowl? I'll go to that one. Who do you got, Danny?
I'll go with Savion Red. I think Texas is kind of found a nice little nice little thing with this Wildcat formation. It's not the same Wildcat that they were running with Roshan the last couple of years. Savion has kind of found his niche, and a guy who's been kind of versatile for this team. But wide receiver last year, running back / Wildcat, quarterback this year. Threw a pretty big block on the key kickoff return for Keelan Robinson, who also deserves a shout out for kind of setting them up on that last drive when they kind of needed everything to go right, because Maalik was still trying to get his feet wet and kind of get used to being in the game. So that kickoff return was huge. And, in addition to Keelan returning it, Savion threw a huge block. So he's been getting a lot of love from his teammates and his coaches in the last week or so, and he probably deserves every bit of it. And maybe now that this offense has to change a little bit with Quinn being out, we may see a little bit more of number 17 back there heading forward. But let's preview this next week. Texas moved up to number 7 in the AP poll. They are 6-1, 3-1 in Big 12 play. BYU's coming to town, 5-2 overall, 2-2 in the conference. Saturday at 2:30. If you're watching at home, it will be on ABC. Aside from the obvious, this is a Steve Sarkisian reunion since he was the quarterback for the Cougars in 95 and 96. So there are probably some nice exchanges before the game. But once things actually get down to business, there's really only one question we need to talk about, and that is the quarterback position. Steve on Monday said Quinn is week to week with his shoulder AC joint issue, whatever exactly that means. What it does mean is on this weekend, Quinn will not be starting. Looks like probably Maalik Murphy. That's at least who would have been starting if that game was played on Monday. Arch Manning is also a possibility. Steve will have to decide throughout this week of practice. But as of Tuesday at 3:20 p.m. when we're recording, Kirk, if you're Steve Sarkisian, who are you picking? Who's your starting quarterback? Who are you going to trot out there against the Cougars?
I'm going to go with Maalik all day long. I just think he's proved it. I think he's earned it. I think he wowed everybody in the spring game. I think he's probably got more confidence just having been in the system a year and a half than Arch does, since Arch hadn't even been on the field yet. And I know if Arch takes 2 steps on that field, DKR is going to break some decibel levels, because of that surname. But and I wouldn't be opposed to playing both of them, guys. Change of pace, give them different looks. Maybe one of them catches fire. But I truly think Maalik, who may have the strongest arm in all of college football, maybe. I think he deserves it and has earned it, and I think the team will rally around him because, boy, when we talked to the players yesterday, guys, I think you'd all agree it was a love fest. They love this guy. Sounds like a born leader, and so I'm all in the Maalik bandwagon.
I would agree. I think Maalik won the backup job. He deserves to be the next man up and get that next shot. I can't get that image of that long ball to Jonte Cook in the spring game out of my head. I think he has a lot of potential. I think because Quinn was a 5-star and Arch was a 5-star, people kind of looked down at Maalik, but he was a 4-star himself. And at one point during his recruiting process was also a 5-star. So there's a lot of untapped potential there. And he's at least played a little bit. He hasn't played a ton, only has 8 passes to his name, but he's at least gotten his feet wet in the college game where Arch is still waiting to make his debut. So I think Maalik is the safer bet, but you never know. That's why I don't make millions of dollars. I'm not paid to make those decisions. Said, how about you?
Got to go with Maalik. He's paid his dues. He's earned the job. He wowed us in the spring. He's got the tools. It's a high octane offense with those receivers, and I don't know if they're going to pull back and make it ground chuck, but I know that they have enough running backs where they can get him comfortable and then set up some shots lately. I'm really excited to see what he's going to bring. And you guys were all there Monday. Didn't y'all get a sense that his teammates are excited to see what he's going to bring? I mean, Christian Jones, his eyes are sparkling. Those guys are excited. Kelvin Banks, hey, your time's coming. Your time's coming. I love the fact that they have rallied behind him and that this thing isn't all of a sudden off the rails because Quinn's gone. I think he's going to make plays. He's new, and so it might be some growing pains. And I really hope that Sark doesn't have him on a short leash. I want to see him. I want to see him be able to make mistakes and still be in there and play, and hopefully lead them to a win.
I think that short leash is also something that should be told to the fans, because I think we all kind of know what's going to happen the first time he throws a pick. If some of those fans have been wanting to see Arch on the sideline, I think Sark will be patient enough, but the fans probably need to give Maalik a little wiggle room too. Thomas, how about you?
Well, number one, since we're talking about BYU, I'm going to plug a story on statesman.com. You guys go read it. Danny wrote a fascinating piece about Sark's days back in the 90s playing quarterback. Really good read. Number two, our bosses want to see Arch Manning because the page used to be off the hook. Number three, of course, Maalik should start. He's paid his dues. He's earned the respect of his teammates. He has a massive arm. He is your big traditional pocket passer. I would love to see the running game get going so Maalik can do some play action, take some deep shots. I'm looking forward to seeing Maalik play a full game.
Hey, guys, don't you think it'd be putting too much pressure on Arch to make him trot out there for the first snap?
Yeah.
I think so, but he's a man.
He's a Manning, and this is the University of Texas. I mean, that's kind of what you sign. I'm not really worried about the pressure.
He grew up with D1 NFL football at his grandfather's, at his uncles, and yeah, no.
There are a lot of offspring.
Arch would be ready for this moment.
I don't know if he is or not. I think he'd be mentally, but he just hadn't done it. So there are tons of
neither's Maalik. So Maalik hasn't either. So.
Oh, he's been on the field.
He hasn't started. You said start. So
that's what I say. I think it's just
it should be Maalik, but if I don't think Arch is gonna soil his pants when he runs out there. He ran out there as a starter.
I just think it'd be putting undue pressure on a guy.
Well, this guy thinks he's going to be an NFL one day. I mean, you throw a seedling out of the nest and he's going to fly or he's going to face plant. Arch won't face plant.
You don't know game one. You don't know what he'll do. Neither does Sark.
No, I don't think he'd be horrible. I don't.
I'm not saying he is.
Then what are you saying?
I'm saying it puts too much pressure on him. I think
it's a pressure sport. It's football. This is not chess.
Well, let's put Arch out there. He'll be the lead on Sports Center then.
Oh, what? Good. He's a Manning. His uncles are killing Monday Night Football ratings. He's a Manning. He's built for it.
Also, he's definitely succeed because he's a Manning.
He's a Manning. It's in his DNA.
Stop it. Hopefully he'll be great.
Hopefully, I mean, because I want my prediction to be correct, we will not see that actually happen on Saturday. But really quickly, we'll kind of go around the room because we're kind of going a little long. But who is one Longhorn that needs to step up in Quinn Ewers' absence? We're not going to include Maalik or Arch in this discussion. Thomas, we'll start with you.
I'm going to go with 5 because I'm talking about that offensive line. Texas is going to have to get the running game going and not wait. They're going to have to get it going early, often. It's the best way to keep the pressure off any new quarterback, even if it's Arch, but it'll be Maalik.
Said.
An inexperienced quarterback's best friend is the tight end. Jatavian Sanders, it's time. It's time for one of those 6-catch, 80-yard, one touchdown performances. And when things bog down, Jatavian Sanders is going to be open. I think he's been largely ignored in this offense because there's such a bevy of weapons. But I think this is the game where Jatavian Sanders may really have a big chain-moving type of performance that's going to make it easier on Maalik Murphy.
Kirk?
I could make it an all tight end show because BYU's got a tight end with 22 career touchdowns.
A lot, man.
Correct. So it could be a lot of activity. I'm going to go out on a limb and say Ryan Watts. They need to get him back in the lineup and keep acting like he's close. You remember last week he said everybody's practicing, and then we didn't see Ryan Watts. But with other guys getting nicked up, Catalan didn't suit up. I mean, Terrence Brooks got nicked up a little bit. So did Gavin Holmes. Maybe we see Jahdae Barron at cornerback some more. But I'm going to say Ryan Watts. There's pressure on him to get in and fix some of what's been ailing that secondary. Who you got, Danny?
I'll go with Jonathon Brooks. I mean, he's a Doak Walker candidate, had a very fine start to the season, was good in the Houston game, led them in rushing, had 8 receptions, kind of got to show off his hands a little bit. He wants to kind of, improve that candidacy and, really become a front runner for that award. I think them leaning on that rushing attack with him and CJ Baxter, who looks healthy and is kind of coming back. I think that's a good way to do it. Kirk alluded to it with Ryan Watts in the secondary. Kind of been banged up. I know Kirk's going to write on that later this week, but how do you think the secondary is going to fare against BYU quarterback Kedon Slovis, who's a veteran, has had a couple stops in his career, but obviously a veteran arm back there. Is this still trouble in the secondary, or do you think they kind of get right on Saturday? Seth, we'll start with you.
I think they get right, but not because they're going to do anything great. I think it's because I think that Texas can get after him on the front end, which will ease the pressure on some of these guys that are stepping in for Ryan Watts. Hadn't been a great season for the secondary so far, and I think it's coincided with the injuries. But he's a cool customer. I watched him at Pitt. He's got 12 touchdowns and 4 picks, and two of those picks were off deflection. So I think that he's not going to be a shrinking violet in this. But I think if the big boys up front, Sweat, Broughton, Collins, those guys, if they can get after him, those defensive ends gonna have to show me something besides Burrs, Barron, Sorrelben. If they can get after him up front, then it's going to make things a lot easier, and then they may be able to turn him over a couple of times.
Kirk?
I think there's going to have some moments where Slovis, lights him up a little bit. Here's a guy that's at 44 starts. He's thrown 80 touchdown passes, almost 11,500 yards, and he won't be intimidated at all. So, and they don't turn over the ball a lot. They get a lot of interceptions on defense, and they don't give up many. So I think, Slovis will have some success, but I think Texas will be ready for it because they probably don't expect BYU to run very much. They only average 79 yards a game running, and they got a true freshman, LJ Martin, out of El Paso, who's their leading rusher. So I think it's Slovis in that secondary. They'll need to come up with some turnovers, more takeaways, kind of like they did in Houston on Saturday.
PJ?
I think there's a perfect storm for Texas secondary to have a tough night. Like Kirk referenced, they don't run the ball much. They're last in the Big 12. I think they'll just choose to throw it all night long. You're talking about the pass rush set. I mean, Ethan Burke's probably not going to play. He's our most consistent pass rusher from the edge. Texas has been struggling in the pass rush. I don't know if they can get that much pressure on Slovis. I think Slovis will probably throw it 40 or 50 times Saturday. I really do. And could be a long night for a secondary that is banged up. We'll see.
I think this is a good chance for them to get right. I haven't seen much film on Keaton, but he doesn't appear to be much of a running threat. So I don't think this is going to be a rematch of the Dylan Gabriel experience from a couple weeks. And Jonathon Smith obviously can move a little bit. So I don't think that's a concern for Texas. It's really just going to be a matter of who is healthy and how many guys they can trot out there. I mean, if they're playing third stringers, second stringers, third stringers, yeah, sure, you'd be concerned. But if they can get some of those guys healthy, if Ryan Watts can go this week, if you maybe don't need Jade on a corner, you can put him back as nickel position, although Jalen Gilbo did play well in the Houston game. I think this is a chance for them to get right against a quarterback who I don't think is one of the top 3-4 quarterbacks in this conference, even though he does have some, a nice long resume. I just don't think he's one of the best quarterbacks Texas is going to see this season. Like I mentioned earlier, BYU's 5-2. Obviously, they've had some success this season. Texas, though, heavily favored and still on track to get back to the Big 12 championship game, but they really can't afford another loss. Looking at this game, looking at the other games on the schedule, really quick, which game concerns you? Is this game the game that trips Texas up, or is there another game you're concerned about? Seth, we'll start with you.
Now that Quinn's no longer the quarterback, if he's not quarterbacking at the TCU game, as bad as they've been, bad TCU teams in Fort Worth always pose problems for Texas. So I worry about them on the road. So that would be the one that I would have circled, even though TCU is not that good this year. But, every team's going to give them their best shot. So that would be the one in Fort Worth.
So you sound like a Texas player. It's saying everyone's going to give Texas their best shot. Kirk, who concerns you on the schedule?
Oh, same as always, K-State, I think. They're out there going to kind of a 2-quarterback system. The guys that can run, too, I think give them some problems. And they boxed TCU's ears like 41-7, something like that. So, so I'm going to go with K-State. But they ought to be glad they're not playing Oklahoma State because, that's been one of their bigger nemesis. And they're kind of on a heater now, 1-3 in a row. So, maybe the Cowboys will do Texas a favor and knock off Oklahoma.
EJ, who's your pick?
It's that trip to Iowa State in mid-November. The weather's probably going to be terrible. Could be windy, could be wet. And, Matt Campbell's reminding everyone why he's a really good coach this year. I would say it's 4-3, despite that gambling scandal in the offseason that took away Hunter Deckers, their starting quarterback, hasn't played, along with some other players. They got this kid named Rocco Becht, a 4-star kid from Wiregrass High School in Florida, and he's balling out. And I think Iowa State is peaking right now. I think they could give Texas some problems.
I'll agree with Seth. Fort Worth on the road, regardless of the Horned Frogs record, they'll have that place packed and ready to go. And Texas just struggled going down to Houston in a road game. So I'll agree with that. Although I am still somewhat, if I'm a Texas fan, concerned about that Tech game, even though Tech is awful this season. But that will be their Super Bowl, their chance to spoil, Texas this season with the commission, one of those nice boxes upstairs. So I'll also say watch out for that Tech game. Like I said, this game is at Saturday, 2:30 p.m. Not the only event going on around campus as we look around the 40 acres. The volleyball team, they'll be home against number 20 Baylor. Texas is ranked 5th currently in the AVCA poll. That's Thursday night. That's Friday night at Rick Gregory Gym. Say hi to TJ if you see him out there. Tonight, we're recording this on Tuesday. Orange-white scrimmage for the women's basketball team, ranked 13th in the preseason poll, the AP poll. So you can get a sneak peek of the Longhorns over at the Moody Center. Next Monday, if you want to check out the men's basketball team, they'll be playing St. Edwards. It'll be a nice little reunion for Rodney Terry, who is a St. Ed's graduate. That is Monday night. The Longhorns are 18th in their AP poll. Cross country and soccer, they are both heading off the Big 12 championship, Big 12 tournament this weekend. The cross country team is in Ames on Saturday. The soccer team is actually in town. Round Rock is hosting that event. And so they start their quarterfinal next Monday against West Virginia. I think that's at 11:30 in the morning. So Lots of events around town to root on the Longhorns. If you can't make it out to DKR, or even if you can, none of those things overlap. On second thought, that's another thing you can listen to while you're heading out to any of these events. What are we listening to on Thursday, boys?
Crickets. Efforting guests for on second thought, but we're dropping on Thursday. It'll be hot as usual.
You look forward to that. Reading on statesman.com, as TJ alluded to as well. I'm going to do a little self-promotion. My Steve Sarkisian story that took a lot of time to do. So I hope if you're a Statesman subscriber, if you want to subscribe, you will check that out on the website, as well as all the rest of the stuff we've written so far this week, and we'll continue to write as we prepare for either Maalik Murphy or Arch Manning's first ever start on Saturday afternoon. That's going to do it for us. As always, thanks for watching us on YouTube and on the website. Thanks for listening to us wherever you get your podcasts. We'll be back next week to talk about Kansas State, recap this BYU game, and we just hope you all have a great week and a great weekend. And I guess we'll see you around campus. Deuces.